Hello, and welcome to the A-Team Group's webinar covering augmented data quality, leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automation to build trust in your data. My name is Joy McKnight. I'm editorial contributor to the A-Team Group, and we'll be moderating the webinar today. Before we get started on our discussion, here are a few upcoming A-Team Insight events that might interest you. So on the 8th of October, there's a webinar, which is AI in Asset Management, Buy-Side Attitudes Towards Gen AI and LLMs, Large Language Models. There's another webinar on the 14th of November, which is Best Practices for Buy-Side Data Management Across Structured and Unstructured Data. And then earlier in the calendar, just a few weeks away, we have on the 26th of September, an in-person event, is the Data Management Summit, New York City, now in its 14th year. So scroll down to the bottom of this page for more information and to sign up right away. But back to today's topic on augmented data quality and getting more from your data with AI. Our expert speakers today are Callum Conego-Watt, Data Governance and Quality Lead, Lombard ODA Asset Management. We have Gil Cross, Platform and AI Product Manager at Acceptor, and Ellen Gentili, Enterprise Data Quality Team Leader at Edward Jones. So I'm going to ask all the speakers to introduce themselves in a moment, but first, some information on how you can take part in today's webinar. To the right of the video, you'll see a box for questions and polls. We'll be running 3 polls during the webinar, so please get ready to vote and help us gauge industry opinion. I'll remind you when the polls are coming up. And if you would like to ask the experts any questions, we'll be taking questions from the audience throughout the webinar, so please feel free to add yours to the box under the questions tabs. So let me now introduce our speakers and let them actually introduce themselves. Callum, do you want to say a little bit about yourself and your history, your career history?
Sure thing, Joy. So thanks very much. I'm Callum. I'm, as Joy mentioned, the Data Governance and Quality Lead at Lombard ODA Investment Managers. I've got around 12 years of experience within the data governance and quality hat, I would say. Mainly working within the finance industry, so investment banking, buy side and sell side, also a little bit of consulting work, but again, just happy to be here to join in this conversation.
Excellent. And Gil.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. Hi, everyone. Gil Cross. I've worked in digital transformation for 10 years in various different roles. I'm a senior product manager at Acceptor. I look after our data automation platform, where we focus on automating our customers' data flows. But we've got a real focus on financial services, so thinking about the impact of regulation and data complexity on our customers is big for us.
Excellent. And Ellen.
Good morning, and I'm so excited to be here. It's an exciting time for this topic especially. Ellen Gentili, I am with Edward Jones. I have a fairly long history with data and data quality and the banking and financial services, and it's a really exciting time with AI, and I'm so happy to see the advancements and grateful to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, you all. I guess it is just as Ellen was saying, I think it's such an interesting time, especially around the adoption of AI and like artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. I think financial institutions around the world are trying to roll out AI and looking for that killer use case, really. And many are pointing to the impact that it can have on improving data quality. And if AI can be fully harnessed to improve the data quality that enters institution systems, then the whole enterprise will benefit. So it does seem like quite a killer use case, really. But of course, there's risks, there's challenges, and augmented data quality with AI tools is no simple feat. But first, before we begin, let's test the audience in terms of the first audience poll. And we're going to bring the poll up now. which is where does your organization display the greatest appetite in deploying AI and machine learning today? And of course, there's a number of answers that you can choose from client communications, ESG analysis, sales and marketing. But we're going to give the audience a little bit of time to register their vote. So let's kick off the discussion with the first question, which I'm going to point towards Ellen to kick us off, which is, where is AI and machine learning being deployed in financial institutions today? Where do you see it? And how are these tools empowering financial institutions to get more from their data?
Yeah, thanks. As we start delving into AI, every organization as a starting point has to decide how they're going to manage their policy around AI first before they start products, and do ethical AI and deal with, bias in the data. But from what I can see, what folks are doing at financial institutions, especially if you have financial advisors, in that scenario, that use case, is basically making it easier for them to do their job, be able to internally gather data. Because one of the conundrums, Joy, and Callum and Gil, you might see this as well, is that before you go full-blown AI, you have to know where your data is going. So you start internally with your own data and serving up information that makes people's lives easier to do, like, how do I onboard a client, and get the right information? We all have been in the place where you use the intranet or the information on SharePoint pages and things like that. So get it right there. Use internal data, and so you can check the quality of the data, manage the biases, and then upscale is what I'm really seeing, and it makes a lot of sense to me. But again, there's a lot of appetite to take the operational tediousness out of things and really automate and ramp up. So there's a lot of opportunities. You just want to do it under your policies first and your standards.
Excellent. And Gil, where are you seeing deployment being in financial institutions today?
We've seen a bit of a split, Joy, between the front office and the back office in terms of like timing. So we think like the first huge ROI examples for AI were coming through primarily in the front office to start with, where they could focus on like revenue generating, arbitrage, risk analysis kind of opportunities, which drove like huge revenue upside, which kind of covered the costs of the big upfront investment you needed in ML at the time. But now what we've seen is this amazing explosion in the middle and back office, probably triggered really by development in technology. Like the back office, for example, has virtually no tolerance for like mistakes, which of course. But now advancements in technology and solutions means that you're able to get a real confidence around your data. And also just the marginally lower ROI costs or the lower ROI, because the actual technology costs of AI have come down, means actually it makes business sense now. So something like 76% of our customers said they're starting with unstructured data type use cases, and the big ones that we've seen really are like loan notice, agent loan notice, digitization in like private debt, OTC confirmation, very unstructured like confirmation documents and term sheets being digitized, subscription packs, big subscription packs to funds being digitized. So those are kind of like the low hanging fruit, but overall I think it always comes back to customer experience and managing risk.
Okay, great. Well, maybe let's take a look at what the results were from the poll. All right. So we're actually seeing quite a bit in terms of cleansing data, validation, etc., research and analysis. It's interesting, maybe the fact that ESG analysis, client communications we don't have anyone that actually picked that. Callum, what's your response to what the poll is telling us from our audience?
Well, this is quite funny because I do have a few points in ESG later on in the session. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. Data validation and cleansing, like there's a lot of applications for augmented data quality there, especially in the AI space, because it's very structured, very regimented type data. Research and analysis, yeah, again, helping the front office, again, to Gil's point, very much looking at the ROI there. And then summarization and categorization, I can imagine that's around making it easier to categorize things in your data catalog, potentially making it easier for the back office to summarize documentation, and again going into the area of the unstructured data, summarizing documentation or even financial reports. So yeah, I do agree, but also I disagree with some of the ESG stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering also about the regulatory compliance. Again, that was an area that I thought would be maybe a bit higher up.
Yeah, I have seen some actual use cases for regulatory compliance and legal as well. I mean, in terms of summarizing marketing information going out to clients, for example, that is potentially a great use case for LLM technology, because you need to make sure that it's aligned with the FCA requirements, ethical, making sure that it's truthful statements, etc. And there is a potential use case to train LLMs on that and compare it against what needs to be done.
Excellent. All right, Callum, I'm going to stay with you. I guess my next question is really, what are the challenges and risks to deploying, whether it's AI or machine learning? You know, what would you say are the biggest ones? And I will probably also address this question to Ellen as well.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I think in the context of this webinar, when we're talking about data quality, there's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation when it comes to challenges of deploying ADQ as well, is that you need good data quality to feed into an AI model, otherwise it's going to put out bad data. But if you're trying to improve data quality using an AI model and the data is already bad, then like how do you start? You need to essentially try and fix the data first before you use it to get to that observability point. There's also the fact that if you are feeding that into the wider business, they're going to be a lot more focused on the data that the AI is producing. And then I've also noted as well is that, and I think Ellen mentioned it too, is like making sure that you've got the right policies in place for like ethical AI, because bias is a something we do not want to introduce into our data. And again, that is a major risk, especially from a reputational point of view, but also soon to be regulatory as well, with the European AI Act coming in very soon as well. But also the third point on this as well that I think is relevant when it comes to challenges implementing AI in general, it's generally just education. We see a lot of our business clamoring for, well, LLMs are big, let's implement them now, or AI, like I all these buzzwords coming, but they don't necessarily know what that means or entails. So it's a bit frustrating having to say, well, hey, slow down a bit. Like we need to fix some of the fundamentals first, which is like core data management practices, before we can even get to some of the cool stuff. So there's a bit of education there, and AI isn't always going to be the silver bullet that people think it is.
Ellen, I can see that you're nodding quite a bit.
Yeah. AI, one example that I thought was really great, was some, I attended a conference and they were basically saying, hey, AI can, code a web page, but not just the web page, 100,000 web pages, right? But is it the context? Is it the right web page? You always have to have a human involved. You can't just let it run and say, yeah, it's all good. So you have to, really plan your roadmap and make sure that there are humans involved, because there, I'm seeing now, a very large financial institution got, pretty heavily dinged by a regulator for data quality specifically. And I haven't seen it always called out as data quality, right? So, it's like, okay, we got to fix our data. We got to do the data management part of it. But if AI is actively transferring the data or, fixing the issues, who's fixing it permanently? So you have to build that, you can constantly have defects in the data, and the machine learning is updating it, like country codes, for example, right? You always have these bad country codes. It's going to take a while to fix this because the country codes are, God knows, they're spread all over the data, in data warehouses, and maybe you don't have a golden source or things like that. You got to fix it permanently. So you have to have a plan. So AI, can fix it, but you've got to have the mechanisms to, have those exceptions generated and put it on incident management and find the root cause and fix it permanently, because nothing should be done, as a regular rigor to just fixing and correcting. You can take more time if it's going to take longer to fix some of these issues, especially with reference data, finding golden sources, things like that. It's a big lift and shift, but AI can definitely help the end users, your output, your stakeholders, your modelers, and things like that. Just fix the data permanently is my warning.
Sorry, just to jump in on some of the points that Ellen made as well, is that I completely agree with the human needs to be involved at some point. I mean, we're a heavily regulated industry, and I don't know if we'll ever be comfortable of just letting AI do the final sign off, because in the event that something goes wrong, or there is ultimately something wrong sent to the regulator, then it raises so many different questions and difficult questions in terms of who's responsible, who's the owner for it as well. So I think maybe it's more my personal opinion, but I see AI more of an assistance tool rather than the end point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Always need that human touch, really, and that human oversight. But Gil, I was going to ask you for maybe if you could provide, from your experience, provide 3 pieces of advice for practitioners working on the application of AI ML, or just, starting out, really.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's definitely some themes that the other guys have covered. So, but the 3 big ones would be use case selection and like thinking about AI control up front. So the guys definitely touched on this, but like SR 11.7 in the US, the EU AI Act coming in 2026, they all say roughly the same thing, which is that if you've got AI that's influencing like a capital event, then you have to have operational control around it. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that you need to really be clear on your model risk management strategies. So, I think that the impact on our customers is that use cases just don't go live. So we're working with a customer at the moment. They say it's 6 months to get a POC approved, and then even longer to get something live. So we've had a project that's been delayed for a year due to unclear AI policy. So the number one thing I think is that before you get started, you really got to think about how you're going to get your organization comfortable. And I think the way to do that is actually, the context of use cases really matters. Like if you pick one where overall you're reducing risk, then it's much easier to slide that in to get people around it. And also, like the other guys were saying, think about how you're going to put that operational control around it. The second one is actually to engage the business. One of the things that we think is kind of funny, over the last 10 years, we've all learned the hard way through digital transformation that putting the business at the front of that process is really powerful. They understand the business problems. If they're able to iterate quickly over solutions, they can deliver them fast. And then it seems like AI has come along and it's all been sort of thrown out the window somewhat, and probably because recently it's been quite a technical tool, and so it makes sense that it would be put into silos and technical people would own it. But I think where the capabilities are advancing now, it's much easier to, with the right controls, enterprise framework in place, actually provide the business with a way to iterate quickly on use cases and develop. The last thing, just really, and Callum mentioned it, is like AI is not a golden bullet. So the quickest way I've seen out of all the implementations we've done, the best way to tanker an implementation is to stay too focused on one individual component of AI early on. And it really is a quick way to get stakeholders to kind of become quite disengaged if they don't see the exact results that they want. It's usually a combination of multiple models plus traditional data management techniques that gets you there in the end. So definitely pan the camera out, think about the full end to end before you focus too closely on the actual AI itself.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Ellen, do you have anything to add in terms of some top tips from your experience?
From my experience, and it's just ever building, right? At the end of the day, it's the use cases and where you get value. If you're making it easier for your associates to do their job and service clients, make sure that the use cases that you deploy and that the end client doesn't suffer the consequences of bad data quality in the AI and the information that is served up. So keep your focus on, yes, if there's a lot of optimization, there's a lot of opportunities to, have other people do different jobs, their day jobs, instead of doing recons, or make sure model validation works more effectively. But never forget who you are serving with all of your use cases. Your customer is your lifeline. Are you doing the right thing for your customers at the end of the day? Because we kind of get lost in the weeds sometimes. It's like, oh, this is shiny and cool, but are we doing the right things and making it easier? And then scale out, have more ROI on it and make sure people understand you did make my life easier. I trust the data. I trust the results.
Excellent. And Callum, did you want to chip in at all? Is there something else in terms of top tips?
I mean, I think they've covered a lot of it. But I think just to pick on the last point Ellen made was scale out is great. Like start small and then work increase from that, because if you try and tackle the whole pie at once, it just doesn't work.
Excellent. All right. And then I was going to go back to Gil. And now the advice is for those that have already started working on AI and ML, how can they actually expand or grow the AI usage within financial services and the operations? And then how do we move, let's say, AI from just beyond sort of improving personal productivity into organization or department-wide applications?
Yeah, so certainly going from, you've solved one or two use cases to department-wide enterprise automation of specific solutions. I think that jump, and we've seen it a couple of times, comes from the realization that, the challenge isn't AI, it's the data management, the human and data orchestration, the AI control challenge. So I think it's kind of a little bit more the same, but if you've got AI and the way you're delivering those solutions is to have developers building code around it, it's just too slow, and you won't have that level of flexibility that you need. So you need low code applications that are able to scale that up. I think that the biggest thing is to select the right type of models. What we found is that general models, and I'm not just talking about generative AI, but actually some of the general models that are offered by the hyperscalers, the ones where they've gone along and put huge tranches of data baked into it already, goes a long way to being able to solve a lot of use cases. So traditional machine learning, deep learning techniques, there's a big upfront investment in training, and you solve one use case. But with these general models, they come out of the box ready to go. Perhaps there's some optimization that you need, but you can solve hundreds of use cases. I think that's the big difference, when you're trying to scale up.
Excellent. And Callum, what advice would you give at that, more in they're trying to expand it, actually organization or department wide?
Yeah, it's again more along the lines of just making sure that you're engaging the right people within the business as well. Like ultimately, they'll be likely the end users. I guess some of the examples that I've got from my experience is that some of the non-traditional users of technology, such as, again, going into the back office, like compliance and legal, they've actually started to become some of the best and quickest wins for AI in general. So to again to echo Gil's point, is that when you're expanding it, you're trying to cover many use cases rather than just one single one. And there's a lot of, I guess, in a lot of organization, there is a lot of crossover, and it's just being able to engage the right people to do that, but also help you identify what's needed as well to help your prioritization.
Excellent. And Ellen, you can comment on that as well, but I was also going to take you to the next question that I have, which is, why is now the time that firms should invest and maximize the use of AI?
Now is definitely the time. I'll go through a brief history here. Anyone that's been standing up data governance, managing data, we've been hacking away at it for a long time, standing up frameworks, standing up tools, standing up applications. And, I've done it a couple of times. And so it's a slow route, with the data stewards, but it's a necessary route where you're curating the data, you're relearning the business rules, you're putting DQ rules. And most firms have invested in a data quality application, right? And so you want to use that, but it's not scaling. I can't do it fast enough, coding rules, rule after rule after rule, CDE after CDE. You have so many more use cases. Think about this, the typical scenario. You have a third-party vendor file, and I'm not picking on third-party vendors. We all have to use their data, but what happens is they do an upgrade to the system, and this is typically what I found for over the years. The output file has defects in it, and all of a sudden the asset values skew massively. AI and machine learning can look at historical data in that file. If you land the data files in, say, the cloud, for example, and profile the data and use augmented data quality to see where's the anomaly. It's standard deviation. Where's the median bin for this? This number can't be that wrong, or it will go wrong on a statement. That's very consequential. So you can do it fast. You can get insights. You can qualify the information and start trusting that process. The other part I want to mention is why AI is, some of the tools that we're using from the vendors with data quality are adding AI capabilities. Once your firm clears that this is okay to use this functionality, think about the use case. There's business rules in the glossary. Just bring those into AI, have it write the DQ rules, and then bring it up the SDLC process, so have a workflow for it to say, yeah, this is a good DQ rule. You have now an army of AI people in addition to the people who are using and deploying rules, and you can scale. But also the other part of this is have it in your data quality strategy and roadmap, because you're probably not going to throw out your data quality tool. You just need to say, hey, I'm going to use this for data at rest, and then augmented or data observability applications for the data that migrates, because then you don't have to code rules for streaming data and things like this. The tools, that's a new use case. Is the data timely? Is it reasonable, and things like that? So it helps you scale and do data quality more broadly without the coding that I think we touched upon, because that's a long trajectory. So it's a huge opportunity. Just, manage your use cases carefully. But it's a great time. I'm super excited about this.
Excellent. I saw Callum nodding a lot during what you were saying, Ellen. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah. And to add to some of those points, especially within data management, data governance, it has been slow to, I guess, show the value to senior leadership and senior management of data governance and data management in general. But now AI is coming along, and it is such a great time to now be in this area because AI relies on having good data. And it's such a strong argument for our profession to say, well, you want to use the DQ, you want to use the AI tool to improve revenue or do X or Y. Well, you need to have the right data first, and that's where ADQ comes along. And then the other point I wanted to make as well is that with these low code solutions and with the advancement in some of these DQ tooling and AI and machine learning, it's allowing firms to be a bit more lean as well, because I guess in your traditional structure, you've got lots and lots of data stewards who may or may not be dedicated roles, or they may just be business users who've got that data quality hat. By having low code and no code solutions, you're taking some burden away from those roles actually, and making easier for them to do their day job essentially, rather than do that piece of data governance or data quality on the side, because now you've got the AI tool supporting them.
Excellent. All right, great. I think we're going to move to another poll, which I have to say also ties into an audience question. And it's really, what is the #1 data quality challenge in your organization? And again, there's quite a few different options there. So we'll give the audience a few minutes to actually choose what they think is their #1 data quality issue. But Gil, what do you think are the biggest challenges that firms face?
So, where we focus in financial services, the investment banks, it's data quality, data complexity. You're talking about loan data, you're talking about like complex over-the-counter trade structures, and they require like a lot of treatment. And it's like a heavily regulated environment. So it changes all the time, and the people are constantly looking for arbitrage. So it's kind of like this complexity, which is compounded by the need for absolute outcomes. And we were talking to one of our customers the other day, and underneath his remit, he's got 5,000 solutions that he has to plug into to be able to take data and manage that data effectively. 5,000, like I can't even get my head around that number. So that not great, but and I think that those numbers are getting bigger because systems are like specializing. So the net result is that stuff just gets pushed out of the bottom there, and you end up with human touch points, and you end up with processing being done in Excel spreadsheets. And so to get good quality data, I think you've got one challenge, which is the data that's in the systems connected by API, but another challenge is bringing down the number of human touch points and the amount of processing being done in spreadsheets is just that's the big way I think to attack that.
And Ellen, what do you think is the biggest challenge from your perspective? And obviously it doesn't have to be the list that's in the poll.
Yeah, no, the biggest challenge with implementing it is always, do I have the right policies and controls to ensure, because we've all lived through Dodd-Frank, we've lived through the financial crisis, and you have to have that gold standard when you deploy this, because you don't want another thing to have regulatory concerns, because anytime you have regulatory concerns, it disrupts all of your planning, it disrupts your projects, and things like that. So you just have to make sure that you have the right roadmap, people, process, and tech. It always comes down to that.
Excellent. So maybe let's see the results of the poll.
Inaccurate data, yeah.
Callum, does that surprise you? Inaccurate data?
No,
it makes me feel like I could never leave my job, right? Well, I'm doing this while I'm in a wheelchair, I always say.
No, there's so many reasons why a company could have inaccurate data. I mean, from manual touch points to third-party vendors, data's coming in. So like I completely relate with this one. And duplicate data as well. I mean, clearly we've got multiple systems, maybe don't master, maybe the golden source isn't fully defined, then clearly duplicate data will always exist, especially with more complex systems. Maybe not quite as complex as the 5,000 different systems that Gil mentioned, but quite complex themselves. Outdated data, yeah, and I think Ellen touched on this as well with the timeliness in data. Now, there are ways to look at freshness. So with these observability platforms, it is interesting. If you don't get the right data in time, it can cause issues downstream. and unstructured data overload. Yeah, fairly standard stuff. Interesting though that incomplete data hasn't been voted on at all, or even human error. I doubt that every organization has got the right controls and process to stop fat fingering, but then again, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's just us. So
Yeah, after my speech, Callum, and then we 0% for human error. People have really made some strides in digital transformation, I think.
Well, fantastic. The other part of the question from the audience was, how can AI and machine learning really help address these challenges and more effectively, I guess, than traditional methods? Does anybody want to take that? I guess we've covered it a little bit, but I think it would be good to be very concise.
sure.
Great, Callum.
So yeah, I guess in terms of how can AI help in this respect, I think I mentioned that there's a number of solutions out there now that are looking at observability and freshness. So like that will help with the timeliness issues and even potentially some of the inaccuracy issues, which could be time series related. But then you've also, I mean, just with AI in general, it's great looking at patterns. So if you've got the right anomaly detection and outlier analysis set up, then that's a perfect use case for AI and can help drive down some of those issues. But you've got to have the whole, I guess, governance structure in place in order to really fix it at the root cause. Because if you don't fix the root cause, then you're still going to get these issues cropping up now and again, whether or not you use AI or not.
Yeah, I'll jump on a little of that. The first thing I did, I didn't have a data quality tool when I first started years ago. And the first thing I did was I asked, the CFO and the risk teams, do you have your data when you need it? Because we were building out a new data architecture. And they were like, no. So I went into timeliness. So there's a lot of data processing that happens. So the data observability tools can speak to the freshness of the data. But what you need to really manage is understanding, do I have the data? What that means is all the data processed? Did the data quality rules run? Do I understand the scope and breadth of data quality? It's on the CDE level, or it's on the freshness of the data and the timeliness and availability. Those are all very relevant things. Did the PI checks go through? All of that stuff. Is the data ready? Is no longer, do I have my data? Do I have high quality data? Because I've said it before at every webinar and event, if you torture the data, it might speak, but it might not speak the truth.
That's excellent. Okay, well, let's take a couple of audience questions. And one has come up, which is, what is the best way to overcome the AI ML skills gap within an organization? Gil, I don't know if you want to try.
Yeah. I guess I can only speak from my own experiences, and I think education around AI is difficult because people don't sort of naturally inherently kind of pick it up, I think. We're an organization of only 250 people, and it's been my main job for a year and a half, and it's taken a year and a half really to reach every part. I think the big piece is that people have to put it into practice to sort of pick it up and really appreciate it properly. So if you do a big piece of education, but then the reality is that they're still 4 months away from 6 months away from actually using it in practice, then it doesn't really take hold. So you've got to find ways, I think, of taking the education piece, but even if it's something small, giving them hands-on practice with the stuff that you're teaching them.
Excellent. All right, great. So we're going to move on to augmented data quality. Ellen, I was going to pose this question to you. Sort of, what is it? And how does augmented data quality, ADQ, actually improve data observability?
Yeah, because data observability on information governance is kind of getting a lot more traction. So the goal is to use machine learning, either through profiling the data, understanding the reasonableness of the data, and then using it to continuously look at historical data, current data, and then be able to apply and automate data quality management. So to correct, data, you've got to have it in your roadmap. Like if you're going to correct data in flight, I would say you have to be very careful, but it does help like the data scientists. It helps people downstream from the system of record where people are creating data, so that it's fully processed and they understand the rules. So using existing rules to understand, hey, when the data moves across the lineage is very important. Understanding, is the quality degrading? What type of things are happening? And like I said back earlier in this webinar, is that if you're going to correct data, you have to, get those defects logged so that you can fix it again at the source and find out, is it an input control? Is it, transformation of the data or data processing? But augmented data quality is a great way to, be able to put in your data quality strategy. We have a tool, we're doing data quality. Where does augmented data quality make sense? In your roadmap, and every organization has to figure that out, but it really has great potential to do things faster, understand the defects that are inherent, and making a roadmap and plan for that, and continuously looking at the results to see, is current data changing the results, or is it more historical data is needed? You have to do this mindfully, but I see a great opportunity to put in your strategy to say, I have data quality for data at rest. I might have some stuff for data in motion. This is where I think really augmented data quality is going to, vastly improve our trajectory.
Excellent. One of the questions from the audience was, does it actually, or how can ADQ best help firms identify and mitigate data biases? Is that something that, or maybe Callum, is that something that you've been looking at, or?
In terms of data biases, we haven't really used ADQ for that yet. I know that's potentially one of the capabilities. In terms of looking at data biases, we mainly looking at just some more of the traditional, let's say, AI ethics processes, such as there's a AI and ethics structure from the ODI. So the ODI, Open Data Institute, has got a very good AI and data ethics workflow that helps us like think about biases and stuff in the data. But in terms of automating that, we're not quite at that stage, and I think that's actually a very, very advanced aspect. I don't know, Ellen, if you've done anything there, but
not as of yet. I would think HR data would be, a good use case where, you could use augmented data quality and statistics to understand, but you got to really understand what's in the data. When you start seeing, some of the typical scenarios of roles and things like that, and titles and stuff like that, that gives you the opportunity to drill into the, what's in the data, and how do you account for that. But I have not personally worked on a project with that, but I see that would probably be a great way to start learning, because there's a lot of interesting facts in HR data about people, right? And that's where bias really counts, as well as, in some other demographic information and geospatial information and things like that.
Excellent. All right. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to move to our third poll, which is really about where where is the most important benefit that ADQ could bring to your business? So if the audience wants to vote now, but maybe I'll move on to another question for Callum, which is around this, which is where do you think ADQ is most applicable in financial institutions? And if you have a sort of a short case study, obviously you don't have to use names, but just, you know, a case study of an organization that's maximizing ADQ at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So this is where I look back to the first poll and say that you know, one of the great applications, especially within asset management right now, I think for ADQ is ESG data. So in our world, ESG data is supplied by third-party vendors. It's very inconsistent. There's no global standard. So you get lots of bits and pieces that may have missing, may be in different formats, may have different company names against it. So it's a bit of a nightmare when you're collating all this and then trying to bring it in and mix and match it and perform data quality checks on it because, well, it's all over the place. So I mean, this isn't the case study, but just some examples of where in ESG at least it's applicable. But ADQ can help actually help identify and rectify sporadic and missing data, and that's very much like potentially filling in the gaps. So if there is semantic-based data that you have, you may be able to infer what the missing data is using the AI ML capabilities to then plug that gap and fill the data in, therefore saving you time having to go and research where it is. And then also the being able to identify different company names. And I think this is maybe something that's a bit more general than just ESG data, but where you have ticker names or LEIs, which may not be full, or you may not have the right corporation name, or you may not have the right parent or child company, being able to feed that into an ADQ solution, which will then be able to do some fuzzy matching or more accurate type matching, that will allow you to identify the what the company is more or less with a percentage of confidence. So that is, I guess, where I think is a very good application. But going into a small case study, not going to name names, but in an organization I worked with in the past few years, we actually used ADQ to augment areas where we had gaps in customer data. And we used, again, some of these matching capabilities from, at the time, more basic LLMs. I mean, LLMs have been around for longer than they have in the past year, but I think what we're used to is just them blowing up. But there was fuzzy matching and stuff in the past. So basically, we had some addresses which weren't really exact. They like postcodes and zip codes being similar but different. We were able to pair that with the graph database where we had other information with customers, and essentially when we ran that through the tool that we developed, we were able to get again that percentage of confidence match with what the data should be. We generally anything over 90% confidence, we just let it autofill in, and that saved time from the end users. But anything below 90% confidence, we had manual interaction with the data. We had people looking at it and making that assessment. Is this the right thing? Is it not? Just so that we had that additional level of control. But I think that is potentially a great use case for some of the more advanced ADQ capabilities now, because they're not just doing that matching, they are looking at wider, more complex data sets and being able to provide alternative and quicker solutions to fixing the data.
Excellent. All right, let's see the results from the poll. So it's improved data quality, time to value. Ellen, what do you think about the results? Was that the one that you thought would come out on top?
You know, between that and increased accuracy, you know, And again, data quality, time to value, that's about scalability. Like, am I being served high quality data? What you hear now is a lot of organizations have a data supply chain, data as a product, right? And so that all feeds into what I'm seeing in that area, the data supply chain, ownership of the quality of the data, and saying that I certify to a certain level. When you consume this data in your marketplace, and this is the world we're headed towards, or many companies might be in, people shop for their data. So they're able to understand the data elements and the metadata from their glossaries, and then they're able to shop for it and understand the quality of the data. So that's speed to value. Like, I want to use the data, I want to get access to it, provisioned properly, right? That safely. And then I want to use the data in this report and be able to get on with my life. So that doesn't surprise me. Data quality being scaled faster and trusting the data is a necessity.
Excellent. I'm going to pose another question to you, which is what needs to be in place to move from a DQ strategy to support ADQ? And then what are the challenges really to implementing ADQ?
It's always hard with, the hardest challenge, and a very common one, is you buy a tool and then you stand it up in your organization, and then, oh, wait, I can't do this. I can't scan data real time. I can't, there's preconditions. I have to set up data sets in order to do that. So it's really important to do proof of concepts. And, it can't be a year long because, proof of concept, but you've got to really, you've got to understand what are the primary use cases, that I'm trying to establish. Like, if I have, a data quality application, am I going to get rid of it completely, or am I going to supplement it with, augmented data quality? And where is that in the data pipeline or the data supply chain? Where does it make sense? Where am I going to get ROI? Do I have KPIs and measures so that we can say I've either reduced the amount of time that it takes for people to do this, and we have better quality faster along that? But those are some of the things, like when you buy an application, I think it's really hard. We don't think about, is it easy to stand up in my architecture? Probably not. So what's reasonable? What are you going to, what are the steps involved? What has to be in place in order for you to hit the ground running? I think is one of the key areas that I could, I've run into.
Excellent. And then maybe one of my final questions is aimed at Callum as well, which is providing 3 pieces of advice for practitioners working on the application of ADQ.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm probably going to be repeating some of the points that we've talked about in the whole session, but the first one for me is you need to think about the whole picture, not just the project that you're working on. Like, it has to work end to end. I think a lot of the challenges and issues that I've seen is that because people just get focused on this one small piece of the puzzle, when actually it needs to fit, as Ellen said, into your whole architecture. You really need to embed it. But that also needs to be very use case driven. And in order for it to work, which then feeds into my next point, which is you need to engage the business and educate the stakeholders in order to make sure that whatever ADQ solution you're bringing in is appropriately used, that they have considered all the possibilities, and that you're set up for success. And then finally, I wouldn't be go amiss without a plug for governance. So, like, you've got to have the right governance in place for any of this to work. Because if you don't, when things go wrong, it's harder to fix. There's no ownership, and inevitably the project will likely fail. So governance is always key in my mind.
Okay, that ties into another audience question, which maybe I'll aim at Gil. What best practices have you used for secure AI data governance besides your approach to data quality?
Well, I thought I'd learned my lesson on answering questions while there's a poll. Did you repeat that question a second,
Yeah.
Joy? Sorry.
So sorry about that. What best practices have you used or seen for securing AI data governance besides the approach to data quality?
Yeah, I guess so. Data governance, I think, comes through good technology. So use of an enterprise application which is flexible enough to have the right audit controls in place, the right user role system so that you can give people the right access to data, partition it when needed, but also the configuration of those kind of approaches. So I think having the right technology in place is probably the most important thing.
Excellent. Does anyone else want to chime in?
I would like to just say, like, you got to have the right processes too. Technology is important, but if people can't use it right, and there isn't the right governing structure in place, then they won't know where to escalate their issues to, or deal with any of the bias issues that crop up, or any of the issues that the observability exceptions that are raised within the technology go. So I think it comes hand in hand with the policy and process piece as well.
And I also think that you can't lose sight of the fact that AI is making your life easier, but humans have to be involved. It makes it easier to get the information and maybe do your job. I'm not worried. I'm not, as gloom and doom as the Terminator is coming, but, that type of thing. But it's serving up information. And that's what, Callum is alluding to here, not alluding to, overtly stating data governance, privacy, security of information, accessing information. It all falls into this. And this is kind of like the time where it all comes together, because we've been working on pockets of things. And now it's putting it all together so that the data marketplace is secure. And hopefully we see less data leaks, and things like that, that really and I won't get phone calls from random numbers and things and be like, oh God, my number was leaked. Those are the types of improvements that I think that we can all capitalize, on. But there's always going to be challenges, but the people are the first. Put people first.
Excellent. All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thanks so much for your insights. Thanks, Ellen, Callum, and Gil. Just a quick reminder of upcoming events that you can sign up for. We have the webinar on the 8th of October, which is AI and asset management, buy-side attitudes towards Gen AI and LLMs. On the 14th of November, we have best practices for buy-side data management across structured and unstructured data. And we also have the coming up very soon, an in-person event on the 26th of September, which is the Data Management Summit NYC. So a final thank you again to our impressive speakers and our sponsor, Acceptor. Finally, please complete our feedback form, as we're always keen to hear your views and improve our products. Thanks so much for joining us for this informative webinar on augmented data quality, getting more from your data with AI. Thank you.